Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Robertszentes, and in this video I will talk about how our unhealed, rebellious side can get in the way of our teachability, our coachability, and eventually how it can get us stuck. Every single one of us has been exposed to, resistance in the past. Every single one of us has been probably in some kind of verbal fight, maybe even physical fight. And whenever there's any type of conflict or friction between humans, we put up a resistance, a certain type of resistance, and that's perfectly fine. There's obviously, a need for that. But when we don't process the events fully, quite often these events register as a form of trauma, traumatic events, then a part of the story gets distorted and then stored incorrectly by our mind. And as it gets documented over there, there's a side of us that remains pissed, remains upset. And this side of us is the one that over time tells the same story over and over and over again, and then turns into sort of this resistive, know-it-all, rebellious piece, a rebellious self-concept. Now, this has been going on for hundreds and thousands of years, so it's in the DNA. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times people don't even know how deeply they are troubled by these things, because they've done it so many tens of thousands of times that it feels and it appears natural. But if you ever felt resistant to something, if you ever felt annoyed by somebody or something, if you ever felt irritated by something, of course the answer is yes, I know. You could probably list 100 things right now, but those are indications that a deeper rebellious side is still, acting out. Now, our rebellious nature, our rebellious side, which again, I want you to know that there's a really good side to it, but I'll explain what it does over time if we don't, we don't tame it, we don't integrate it. So our rebellious side is very, very deeply, it resides deeply in the unconscious. And it's been there for so long, it has created and crafted thousands of stories. Quite often these stories are funny, very dark, typically. And it becomes, as I mentioned, so natural that over time we don't even know that we are just rebelling against the world, rebelling against, our parents, rebelling against pretty much anyone that comes at our way. And it comes out in the form of, annoyances, resistances, and then when we had enough, kind of like the champagne bottle cork pops, we just lash out, and that is the rebel. That is the rebellious side's exhibition. Now, you can also see this when people drink a lot. They get wasted, and the true personality, the wild and crazy side, comes out. And, sometimes it's, comes out in like a lot of fun, but sometimes comes out in a lot of violence. That violence is this rebellious side. And as you know, time doesn't heal. It's a misconception. Time perpetuates things. So whatever we have in the unconscious, the tens of thousands of programs that are off or outside of our radar screen, good and bad, they grow in intensity, they amplify. So does the rebellious side. So, the little tiny problem we had 40 or 30 or 20 years ago, now it's much bigger when it's not healed, or it's not attended to, it's not taken care of. And what happens is that the annoyances get so big, the disappointments grow to a size where we literally just shy away from the world, and our mind starts to do something really interesting. It starts to what it called dissociate. Dissociation means that you push away. I don't want to deal with this. We'll talk about this later, maybe never. And we start dissociating. We start pushing things away. We start even pushing images and feelings away. And ironically or interestingly enough, it gives us a relief. Because when you push out emotions, you can actually use this. It's a technique in NLP where you move a picture out away from yourself and the feeling goes down. We do this automatically. But the problem with that is that the event is still there. It didn't go away. It has a lot of pain in it, a lot of unresolved junk in it. So as it grows in intensity over time, actually starts to spill over, but now we don't know what it is because we have thousands of these things. And a lot of our rebelliousness comes out in the form of judgment. So whatever we dissociated from, whatever we pushed away, we end up judging. Look at this asshole, look at that, right? It's because these painful aspects of us, the self-concepts, have been dissociated and pushed away. And now it's just over there outside, but they show up in our reality because, what we attract who we are, what we are. And then they show up in the form of people, events, and circumstances, reflecting back our hidden vibrations and the ones that we are consciously aware of. So, as you could see, when the pain gets big enough, some of you might be there already, some of you might have already, or might have good enough socialized, what we call light shadows on top, where you can still function in life. But you know that sometimes when somebody pushes your button, this rebellious side will come to the surface and will, do the vomit. And what's interesting about this is that if we do this long enough, we will, as we pushed away our self-concepts, we pushed away things we didn't want to deal with, we also start pushing away people. And at a certain point, there's a tipping point where the mind gets so upset and so into this defense, it starts pushing away mentors, it starts pushing away good people, it starts pushing away opportunities, it starts pushing away things that we actually logically would want. Because the mind gets so entangled with the pain, it cannot differentiate between, positive, negative, good, bad, and all those things. And I don't want to get into the spiritual definition of what's good and what's bad. Everything's good because, talk about negative emotions and necessary things and things that we don't necessarily need. So when the mind gets to that level of upset, it starts pushing opportunities away. You could see, I used to work with soldiers a lot when I lived in San Diego. A lot of PTSD clients. Maybe 1 out of 100 would say yes for help. Everyone else just says no. They're almost like in so much pain they push away help. I've seen women do that. When the upset is big enough, we become irrational and illogical. So it becomes an obstacle to teachability because it pushes away opportunities, mentors, and whatnot. So if this is something that you recognize in yourself, obviously you now know that it is not something that you knew that it was coming from so deep. So that needs to be addressed because it will get into the next level, and I'll tell you what it really is doing, what its ultimate function is. But what I like to do is go back and tell you how it was created. The rebellious side gets created from an ancient trauma. You could have experienced something in your childhood, could have experienced something in like a family pattern. Maybe it happened to your ancestors, I don't know. So the time has its own magic, how it distributes events and where, the original stories come from. But the origination of the rebel is from a heartbreak. Heartbreak is a form of trauma. And what happens is that when our heart breaks, I explain a little more about the heartbreak in one of my other videos, on the trauma video, then we get very defensive. Of course, it hurts. It's extremely excruciatingly painful. Of course, a lot of it is self-inflicted. And then our rebellious side kind of like wraps around itself this particular event and has a function of protecting us from more hurt and more heartbreak. But initially, it might seem like a good idea, and it probably is. But if it gets carried over decades and maybe even, lifetimes, then this protection mechanism, presented as this rebellious side, is exactly what leads to scarcity, what leads to more heartbreak. And when people get so conflicted because of these self-inflicted defense mechanisms, it causes them to get stuck. Because if they try this option, it hurts. If they try that option, it hurts even more. If they want to take a step forward, that hurts. If they want to just stay where they are, that also hurts. So life becomes very strangely, convolutedly painful and almost meaningless. But all of it is caused by a rebellious, unhealed rebellious side that at one point had a purpose, it was unacknowledged, and then started to spin more and more stories, started to create more and more like these dark explanations for us, and then it became a runaway train. And all we feel now today is that, things just not working. So if this is you, go ahead and reach out. There's a link underneath this video, and I can spend an hour with you, and we can attend or talk about your particular situation, and I'll give you guidance as to what the next logical good step would be for you. All right, guys, this is the end of the presentation. I appreciate your attention and catch you on the next video.